Bienvenidos a todos a este espacio de docencia y difusión que organizamos desde la Científica continuamente para ustedes. En este espacio que es informativo y de actualización sobre innovación en radioterapia, vinculado a todo lo que tiene que ver con las tecnologías que representamos. Bueno, en esta oportunidad estaremos hablando sobre MIM software para la optimización de flujos de trabajo en radioterapia. Mi nombre es Katy Coello, soy físico médico y aplicacionista clínico de DELEX Científica. En DELEX somos una compañía de innovación tecnológica aplicada a la medicina. Somos consultores y desarrolladores de proyectos de innovación, proyectos integrales en radioterapia, en imágenes y en simulación. El webinar del día de hoy forma parte de una iniciativa con fines de divulgación que llevamos en conjunto con MIM Software, a quienes agradecemos poder permitirnos pertenecer a esta red internacional que busca día a día mejorar tratamientos. Desde DELEC queremos agradecerles a todos su presencia, el tiempo que están tomando para compartir con nosotros este espacio. Agradecemos muy especialmente al Dr. James del UC San Diego Health, quien tiene más de 10 años de experiencia, mi maestro y quien hoy nos va a compartir parte de su experiencia. Es un honor para nosotros tenerlo. En unos momentos le doy la palabra para que él pueda presentarse personalmente. Antes de dar inicio, paso a hacerles algunas referencias técnicas importantes para este webinar. Para poder escuchar a las intérpretes con la traducción en simultáneo en español, cuando el Dr. James comience a dar su presentación, es necesario que aprieten el botón de interpretación y elijan el idioma español. Este botón se encuentra, lo encontrarán en su pantalla del lado derecho en la parte inferior. Tenemos previsto que el encuentro dure aproximadamente una hora. Primero habrá tendremos el espacio para la presentación y luego habrá un espacio de preguntas. Las preguntas también pueden ser escritas en el chat durante la presentación y estas serán abordadas al finalizar la misma. Si quieren, pueden ir pasando al modo de interpretación, de modo que una vez que el doctor comience a hablar, ya lo tengan activo. Hi, Dr. James. Dr. James, it is an honor for us to have you for this webinar. We are very grateful and attentive to what you come to share with us. Welcome.
All right, well, you're welcome. We're happy to be here. All right, so I'm Jim Urbanek or James Urbanek. I go by either. I work at the University of California, San Diego. I've been a radiation oncologist for about 18 years altogether at this point. I've been using MIM for about 12 years. So I've been there through several iterations of the software over the years, and addition and adjustment of various features within the software. I've taught, probably 75 or so residents at this point, resident physicians, how to use MIM, as well as, many of my colleagues. And obviously I wear many hats in my career at this point, besides teaching. I do research mostly around lung cancer. I don't know if I've met any of you over the years. It's hard for me to scroll the list, see if there are any familiar names. But I've been around in the Americas and Europe for a while. And I also manage for the University of California our proton therapy program. So I do that also as part of my job. So kind of in and around fairly advanced technology on a daily basis. I don't work for MIM. I don't sell for MIM. We're not looking for a different product. So, I don't necessarily know the comparisons with all the other products out there, since we've had MIM here at the University of California now for probably 7 or 8 years, because I was using it before I came here, around that time. Okay. So, trying to make am I sharing my screen? Yes. Okay. So the typical financial disclosures, we do at the beginning of a talk. So obviously I work for the University of California. I do some consulting work now and again for Bristol Myers, and I am the principal investigator on a couple large national lung cancer clinical trials, and these are the places that I work for. So the things that I wanted to talk about today and kind of walk you through, and I'm not going to do much in terms of PowerPoint presentation. I'm mostly going to kind of show you what I do in the software itself, because I think that's probably more valuable to kind of see at least how I approach the workflows, or don't approach the workflows, as the case may be. Give you some sense of what we do in terms of contouring, image fusion, how we move radiation dose around to review it in the context of imaging, and then a couple of cases where we've treated a patient a couple of times over the year, and how do we deal with imaging and looking at cumulative dose and that sort of things. The way I think about most computer products and software is it's a little bit, like your iPhone or your Google phone. I probably, only use 20% of the features on my phone. I'm sure you're all the same way. And my 16-year-old son can probably show me 1,000 things that I'm not using my phone for that I should be. So I would imagine this software is similar, where I'm using things that I find helpful for me, and there are pieces of it that either I haven't found super helpful, or perhaps I'm set in my ways in terms of doing things. But that's more for you to explore if you decide to end up using this software package. All right. So I'm just going to pull up essentially the MIM screen. So I don't know who on the call is already using MIM or has MIM, or how much experience people have. There are a couple of different ways to display the MIM product. So this is really the classical homepage, if you will. They have a newer homepage which links the different features together a little differently. I think they're both excellent. I've been using this method for a long time, so I'm slow to want to change to the new one, because I'm very fast doing it this way. But it's super simple, and I'm not here to try and show you all the buttons to click, but essentially, you put your patient information up here of what you're trying to look up. For me today, all the patients have been anonymized. I went through and took my actual patients over the last few of them, obviously over the last couple of years, and anonymized all their personal information, so we avoid any privacy issues. I've essentially labeled them, some version for today, but we have all their imaging here that we can essentially play with. And I can, when I'm done with their imaging, if I choose to, I can move their imaging around to a variety of other radiology software systems, or different partitions within our MIM server itself. I'm actually running MIM through a Citrix connection to the big server farm for the university, right? So I have a desktop installation as well, but frankly, with the constantly changing firewalls at work for computer security, I find it easier if I just patch right into the server system through a Citrix connection, and it actually works well and is quite speedy. All right, so this first patient is a fairly simple patient in my mind for what we're doing in modern radiation treatment. They have a stage 1 lung cancer. And we're just going to be targeting and looking at a single tumor in one corner of their lung, right? So for us here, lung cancers, we image with a 4D CT simulation, right? So 4D imaging allows us to look at the motion of the tumor. We do it here at the University of California with either the Varian system, it's Varian's a manufacturer, as you all know, or through a surface guided system called Align RT. That's how we generate the movie that we're going to make of this person. So within MIM, when we do this, we get the raw data off the CT scanner, and then we get, my physicist provides us with this file, which then is able to separate all 2,000 images into the different components to look at the different portions of the breathing motion, right? So that's vital. So my physicist does that for me, although I can do it myself. I like to give everybody a job. So anyway, so the simple way is I can load all these pictures in. We've already gone through, I'm not going to show you every button. We've already made the average of all these pictures. We've already made the maximum picture of motion, right, which we call the MIP image. And so we'll load all of that in. And then I'll also, just for time, load in the already created radiation plan. So we can just, do that with normal, typical mouse clicks. So we open it. That's another patient I had that we're working on, and that's just an example that we can run multiple patients at once. Like any software, if I have too many things open, it might give me a memory issue, especially if I'm running on my desktop. But for the most part, that's not an issue. Okay, so this is what you get when you open it up. So these are all from the same patient. We have here on the top the movie or motion image of this patient, and I know that in part just because I have controls to run the movie. I have the maximum projection here, right? So this is like the summation of all of these pictures. And on the bottom, I have the average picture. So this is how I would end up drawing the contours, and I'll show you a little bit of that briefly. And then looking at the dose and the radiation plan. Okay, so it's very simple to set up a new page to look at. So I can go through, I can grab what I want to look at in any view that I want. And I kind of have standard options up here. I create a new picture. I can then very quickly, adjust the picture so I can look at it, right? You notice that these, or at least some of them, are already fused together. That was a good example of a little Citrix glitch there. Screen flashed for me, or maybe it was on Zoom, hard to know. But these are already fused together. This one isn't, and that really is only because I had to manage the imaging when I anonymized it a little differently. It's kind of a complicated detail issue not to worry about. But I can refuse this back in by selecting the fusion option, selecting the series, and then selecting one or the other, and we'll pick this one over here. And then it'll very quickly give me an automated fusion of these pictures, and we should be pretty ready to go to do this. Let me get rid of it. I over-clicked. I probably have a couple extra windows open, so you can see I've got several sessions open, and probably getting to the limit of memory to do this. Okay, so the other thing you can see is this picture is quite busy. So we'll go ahead and start turning off other features. I'll turn off all the contours. I'll turn off all the dose. And then I can go, since we've already got dose on here, we have these beams already arranged. MIM doesn't do 3D conformal, beam creation and dose generation, but it will take the beam information and provide it for me here in the plan as part of my plan review process, which honestly, I really don't do much with this. So I typically just turn off all the beams, right? And that gets rid of a lot of that extra information. I can clean this page up by recreating it. Again, gets rid of the fusion picture at the bottom, and now I've got all these pictures put together as one fused series. Let me go ahead and I'm going to close a couple of things just to speed my computer up a little bit. This one in particular, so sorry. So, okay, that'll speed me up. That's a big file. It's kind of like the grand finale if we get there. Okay. So very quickly, I can put on long windows for all these pictures, right? And then scroll down to where the tumor is. So you can see this person has a fair bit of lung injury from smoking, right? Still a major problem for our patients around the world. But clearly we can see the tumor here. We have the motion imaging here, and we have the maximum projection over here. It's kind of cool. I can turn on the motion image very quickly. You can see now we're starting to see the respiratory cycle and motion of this picture. I can manipulate all of this at the same time. I'm doing this. And then if I wanted to put on the contour of the tumor, I have other things drawn, so I'm not going to bore you with drawing everything, but we can draw this all at the same time. And the nice thing is it'll show up on all the pictures at once, right? So close. There's another window. Let's see if that helps. Oh, okay. I'm usually not having people watch me do this. It makes me nervous. Yeah, so you can see we can very quickly contour on any of these windows and generate ultimately, the target volume that we want. We can edit it. It's a very quick and easy process. I tend to go through and do, this with residents. They can save something for me. I can come and I can pull it up very quickly and review their work, and then I can adjust it. So, for example, we've put all of these contours on between myself and the dosimetrist to basically put on the normal tissue, the targets, everything we need for basically planning this is done in here. Some of it, frankly, is also done in our treatment planning software. Here we use Eclipse. It doesn't really matter what package you're using. And then we can actually bring it back over to MIM if we choose to. When we move things from the other software packages, most of our things are set up that it's literally a drop down and send kind of thing. There's not a lot of work that we have to do to actually move the imaging around in terms of manipulating files and file transfer protocols and all the things that we may have had to do, a number of years ago. This patient's actually being treated currently. He's one of my patients. And obviously we look at all this in the treatment planning software, but for review purposes, archival purposes, if I ever have to treat something down the road and I want to recontour things, I put all of his dosimetry information here into this software system, and I can look at it and adjust and review the dose, and be very comfortable ultimately with what I'm seeing. Okay. It's also, we'll have questions at the end, I think. Yeah. So it's always nice to have questions during to know what I'm, telling you too much about or not enough, but we'll do those at the end. Okay. So let me go to the next case. Let me close this one. No. Okay. The next case would be pretty typical. I'm going to kind of try and speed you through the workflow a little bit. So this is interesting because to me, I think MIM does pretty well with dealing with the same patient but different medical record numbers. So this one, he comes from 2 different hospitals. I've just adjusted the medical record number to be A and without an A. But this would be his imaging from the CT simulation here. So we have his CT scan and we have his raw contours. These are actually the contours that we planned with, and of course the dose. I'll just bring a lot in just for efficiency. So that's going to load pretty quickly, I hope. So there it goes. You can watch it load. The way we have it set up in our clinic, we have a computer in all of our exam rooms, so I can bring up this stuff and show the patients. And so I usually will show them, that it's loading. So that way, if I'm sitting there and having to fill time, they feel like they're watching something happening, basically. So it's working on loading, which is interesting. Making the diagrams. It's also interesting, I never can tell what computer gremlins are out there in the world, in our server system or on, my computer itself. It's actually loading, interestingly, a little slower than normal. So just figures since I'm giving a presentation, right?
Dr. James?
Yeah.
We have a question.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Can we use for this software for radiotherapy and radiosurgery?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry.
Radiosurgery, radiocirugía. Sí.
I'm not sure I fully understand what the question is.
The question is, this software is useful for radiotherapy treatment and SRS treatment.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So it doesn't plan, right? It does the image management, right? So it does the contouring, it does the image fusion, it does all of that. But it doesn't actually plan the SRS. But yes, we use it for SRS planning all the time. I'm just reloading the MIM software, so which is entertaining. But yeah, we use it for SRS planning. We use it essentially for all our planning. Okay, so it reloaded. You can see it's running a lot faster now. I probably had too many things open at once, which was my fault. So we'll open this up really quickly, typical head and neck plan, and then we'll look at a brain radiosurgery case. And I'll try and do that in the next few minutes. So you can see now it's loading much quicker. I'm going to be optimistic. Okay, so there you go. That's normal. So the way we would manage this is a head and neck case, right? So obviously you're going to fuse in your PET CT, right? So I'm just going to turn off all these beams again. That's a little bit ahead of what I need. And then because it's a different hospital that the PET scan came from, it actually uses a different medical record number. So we'll be able to load that in and fuse that in really quickly without any major issues. So that's going to be here. So we can pick the CT scan, the PET imaging, and I know because it's labeled over here, we can pick the other CT scan. We can load all that in very quickly. Make it run. Okay. Well, so now we know, because it's got the contours on it, so I'm cheating a little bit, that this is our scan we're going to use. And I can fuse in both the diagnostic CT with contrast, as well as the PET scan very quickly. And then if I want to, I can manipulate. This is the image fusion itself. So you can see here on the side view of the person's head that they're a little bit out of center. We can adjust them very quickly, pull them into place kind of manually, or we can use some of the tools to actually do it on a more automated basis. So basically, we've probably all seen this kind of thing. We put it around region of interest. We do the fusion, and then we have a product that comes out for us. We can do that for all the imaging, and then we can very quickly set up to evaluate the imaging, right? So it's a pretty quick process to do that, right? So for this person's head and neck cancer, in just a matter of a couple of minutes, we're able to basically pull in all their imaging, rescale it to the right size, move it around, and these contours were all done previously, and I can manipulate all the contours to deal with this person's cancer here on the base of the tongue with involved lymph nodes, right? I think to answer the question, I'm going to speed up just a little bit, hopefully not in terms of my talking, but just in terms of moving stuff around. I'll show you the brain radiosurgery case, so you have a chance to see what that looks like. So this is a patient of mine, and you can see we've been treating her with brain radiosurgery since 2016. It's now 2022. So that's 6 years of radiosurgery. This is a patient with a adenocarcinoma of the lung. Who's actually been on pemetrexed chemotherapy for several years. She does not have a mutation that we can target a specific drug to. But she has on occasion shown up with an occasional brain metastasis. She's, neurologically intact. She doesn't have any memory deficits as far as we can tell. So we're big believers here in trying to minimize patients getting a whole brain radiation treatment. So we do a lot of radiosurgery, especially to multiple small targets in the brain. So this would be pretty typical for my workflow, where I'm loading in essentially several years worth of imaging that I built for this patient over the course of her whole oncologic history. And that way, each time I see her, I can basically load the most recent session and then just add the new imaging to it, right? So we're fast forwarding here after 6 years of work on this person to basically loading in all 6 years at once, and then kind of reviewing where we are now. So other than my prior computer meltdown, you can see this is actually loading fairly quickly for multiple CT scans with multiple dose files and multiple MRI scans. So just a little bit. I had it preloaded, and I think a number of very complicated patients I had preloaded. My computer was not happy with it. Okay. Right. So you can see this is now 10 pages of data here. Right. I'm not going to go through all 10 pages, but lots of different ways that we can look at this. So for a brain radiosurgery case like this, I can now compile all of her imaging over many, many years. So here's 2022, 21, 20, and then just skipping back, I can fill in between 2016. I usually run 2 monitors, and I don't like to make super small screens, but I can display, 8 images at once if I want to. I can't really show you 2 screens at once. She also has all of her dose here from the various courses of radiation that we did, right? So you can see none of these are compiled yet. So the way that we do that is really simple. I usually just pick the most recent scan, and of course it can be saved. We have 3 dose files here. We have 2016 twice, and then 2020 here, and we simply just transfer those to the most recent scan, which on this page is the 2021 picture. So we just transfer that dose, that one. I just go to the next one, I transfer the dose to that one again, and then I go to the last one and I transfer the dose again. I think it's going to be, let's see. And then what we can do is then we can go to this function up here. We can go to the scan that we're looking at, and then we can compile all of those doses up, and then it'll make a dose summation for us of all the different courses that we've done here, and then we can look at them essentially all on one scan. I think I missed one somehow, but I was trying to do it. So that's how we basically are able to try and then assess, what are the new things in her head, what are the old things in her head, and what is our risk doing repeat treatment. I think I have time for one more case. Let me get rid of this. There's never enough time in the day. Hey, I'm always happy to come to Argentina or Uruguay or Bolivia. I was supposed to go to Uruguay about 25 years ago, and I never made it. So I'm happy to try that again. Okay. So I'll just pull this one up really quick. It shouldn't take but a minute to load. I used to race sailboats. So I was supposed to be doing what was known as the Whitbread Round the World race at the time. And they used to go to Punta del Este, Uruguay, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So that was my dream, was to sail from Southampton, England to Uruguay, and we ran out of money, which I think is the story for many things in life. Maybe I can retire and do it again. But I was, I think, 22 years old and trying to work on people's boats. That's why my office has all these boat pictures on the wall. Okay. It's coming.
Dr. James?
Yeah.
We have another question.
Oh, perfect.
Which have been the benefits of implementing this software in your clinic?
Oh, yeah. So the number one benefit for me has been organization, right? When I see patients, it allows me to really organize their imaging combined with my contouring work and treatment planning work in a way that in, for example, Eclipse by Varian, which is really geared towards treatment planning, I can't do with speed and nimbleness. That's number one. Number two, which I haven't even touched on yet, is I can transfer data, imaging data, treatment planning data between all the various hospitals that I work at very easily. So it's really organized to allow me to do that. If I wanted to do that on this patient, so this patient has two monitors of data. I would simply, if I wanted to send something somewhere else, for example, if I wanted to send all of this data at once, I would just click on it. I would send it to MIM Cloud, which is essentially a choice over here. It's already logged me in automatically, and then I can pick any one of several different locations to send it to. Right, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to have something running in the background while I'm trying to show you stuff. But so it allows for that process very quickly, including the radiation data. So I'm not struggling to move radiation data around in addition to the imaging data. So I think it really is the main benefit, is really allows me to be highly organized and ultimately very, very efficient in what I'm doing. Okay, that answers the question. And like efficiency for this patient in follow-up is kind of what I was getting at, where this young woman she's in her 20s, she has a pelvic Ewing sarcoma. She was treated with proton therapy, and I'm not trying to morph the talk to tell you about the joys of proton treatment, but you can imagine for a young adult or pediatric cancer that we think about proton therapy. She has this big tumor here that we treated intact, and we're trying to follow our imaging as most radiation professionals do to figure out what's the effect of radiation. Is there recurrence happening? So for this patient, right, she has this change here going on in the upper part of her femur, right there, part of her leg bone, very close proximity to where there was cancer here in the inner part of her hip. And we have to figure out, like, what is that? So I get a radiology report, pretty typical, and they start telling me they think this is cancerous, right? And I say, I don't think so. And so I can prove it to them, at least my hypothesis, by going and putting on all my targeting, right? And then I can put on essentially all of my my radiation dose as well. So so for example, I could sum all this up, but I'm not going to right now. But I'll put it onto her current scan here. This is at least her initial plan to 50 gray. Here are her boost treatments over here. And then I can show very quickly the radiologist that, look, the abnormality that we're seeing here behind, let me turn off the contours so it's easier. Behind where I treated her is right in, boom, right in the high dose region, right? And so between that and then looking at it with the orthopedic surgeons, our working hypothesis, and she saw us here as well as at the Cleveland Clinic, that this abnormality is likely, radiation injury that we're seeing. And she's fully functional young woman, riding a bike, living a pretty normal life. And, actually it's pretty cool. You can see with, just to take an aside, with proton treatment, going to a very low dose, we stay out of the rest of her pelvis pretty well with her treatment to do this. So So this is a great example of, contouring, image organization, follow-up imaging, and being able to communicate back to the other members of her cancer team. Okay. So I think that brings us up probably a little past time. Sorry about my computer glitch, but that's good to see, right? You get to see real world stuff. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to try and take them.
Dr. James, we noted that you need a robust PC. What minimum requirements must the computer have to use it?
Oh, yeah, minimum requirements. Yeah, that's not my area of expertise. I can tell you, I run MIM on my laptop through the Citrix connection, because I think the Citrix connection makes the requirements pretty minimal. I don't know if you do what the requirement is if you use the desktop installation. I think if you have a fairly modern computer in the last couple of years, it's probably more than adequate. I like the one under my feet right now at my desk. It's a 5-year-old computer. It's hardly new. I might even actually be 6 or 7 years old. So I have to pay for my own computer at work, so I tend not to buy them very often. What else?
Another question. Does the auto-contouring system contour over the PET-CT imaging?
Yeah. So
how
go ahead.
How is the selection of the PET-CT depth intensity to define the volume?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Or manually?
Yeah, fantastic question. So there are a couple pieces there, right? So the auto contouring in MIM, and I didn't even show it to you, works pretty well. I'll tell you, I don't use it, which is going to make the MIM people go bananas or crazy, right? Not sure the translation of bananas for that. Because I end up editing auto contours and spending more time looking at them and editing them than if I just do them myself. There are contouring features like to contour the lung or the trachea or things like that are actually very fast already in MIM. So I'm not a big auto contour guy, but I'm also a pretty senior attending, so maybe I'm on the wrong end of the spectrum for that. But I think some people really like it. So. All right, next question.
Does the auto contouring system define target volume or only hours?
Yeah. So the other question was about the PET scan. You can set the minimum threshold so it contours around the PET scan. Again, I don't ever do that because I think PETs are variable on the time of injection to the time of imaging, right? So, and that's going to change your uptake. So I don't think we know from a cancer standpoint enough about PET to say we should be auto contouring based on the PET imaging for the target. The same thing with a cancer target, right? Like for the picture on the screen here for this young woman, I would have, and I know because I did it, I would have hand contoured everything on her that I was working on or calling tumor for her, and not done an auto kind of contouring methodology. Just because a couple of things. One, I think the time I spend thinking about a patient and working through the problem myself, as opposed to letting a computer give me an answer, I think sometimes that's valuable time for me to decide what I want to do. And that may be a little philosophical, but I think there's a push and pull to automation and speed where I don't think we can forget in radiation oncology that there is a lot of thought that needs to go into how we do this, what we're willing to sacrifice in terms of our treatments for both tumor control and toxicity. So I don't push speed for the sake of speed. If that makes sense. Other questions?
Yeah, yes. Thanks. How was the installation and training of the software?
Yeah. So a couple of things. So I was a young attending when we first started using MIM, and one of my residents taught me how to use it. That was a dozen or so years ago. Which when I was a resident, I had taught all the faculty how to use the GE system. And how did we do that? We kind of figured it out on our own, and then taught, our neighbor, right? But I will say the MIM company has one of the best customer support networks that I've ever worked with. I mean, I know we're on a similar time zone. You're actually closer to their time zone if you're calling them in Ohio than we are here in California, but I can call them up, get a person on the phone pretty quickly, and they've been fantastic over the years. I haven't had an issue with questions or technical issues, that sort of thing. Okay. What else?
Not for now.
Okay.
Si hay alguien más que desee realizar alguna pregunta, es el momento, si quieren. Pueden colocarla en el chat. Okay. We have more questions. Well, yeah. De todos modos, invitamos a los asistentes a continuar haciéndolas a través del chat si aún tienen preguntas. How many centers do you know that use this technology?
Well, I don't have a.
Do you know centers in Latin America?
Oh, in Latin America. I can't say specifically in Latin America. I know I work, so in San Diego, obviously Mexico is, just down the road. So I know I've shared imaging with some of our partners in Mexico because we do get patients back and forth across the border. There are Americans who go to Mexico and there are Mexicans that come here. So I know there are some clinics there, but I don't know deeper south in the Americas what the penetration is. Here in the United States, MIM is super.
Yo puedo complementar un poco esa pregunta como parte de aplicaciones clínicas de DELEC. Tenemos varios centros en la región que utilizan ya MIM software. Y la verdad los resultados han sido muy satisfactorios. MIM se usa en Argentina, en Bolivia, México tiene grandes instituciones también utilizando el software. Y bueno, sí, es un software que en la región ya se utiliza y que está todavía en crecimiento, digamos, de su base instalada. Another question. In terms of percent, yes. In terms of percent of time, how much is the improvement of time using MIM software in your service daily practice?
Yeah.
And can you reflect to that too in quality?
I think on a simple case, right? If I'm doing a standard breast cancer case, or a bone metastasis in a hip, it's not going to speed me up. okay, something very simple. But on my complex head and neck, lung cases, etc., I think it speeds me up probably in my practice by about 50% for sure. And then when I see patients and follow up, and as things get complex over the course of their lifetime of care, it's almost unmeasurable in terms of how it helps to improve my speed and my ability to evaluate data.
Perfect. Can it be used with any brand of accelerator?
Yeah, so the files are DICOM files, right? So they're fully transferable to all of the commercial treatment planning software programs, right? And so then that, filters through the treatment planning to the accelerator. So yeah, we have no compatibility issues with that. So has not been an issue. So there's actually an ASTRO, that's the the US/International Radiation Professional Society committee that I used to be part of, where we would evaluate different new hardware and software programs to ensure compatibility across vendors. There's actually a major push in the field to ensure that that's the case. This is the same here.
Perfecto. Bien, no tenemos más preguntas. No more questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. James.
Yeah.
It was a very interesting presentation.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I would also like to thank MIM Software for collaborating with this webinar.
Great. You're welcome. Happy to do it, and happy to see anybody if they want to come and see me this way or have me down that way. Happy to do it. Pleasure.
Gracias a todos por el tiempo que nos acompañaron. Si alguno necesita alguna constancia de participación, puede dejarlo reflejado en el chat y en los próximos días se les estará enviando. Este webinar también fue grabado y será compartido para referencia en el futuro con ustedes. Y bueno, seguimos en contacto para las siguientes organizaciones que hagamos en este espacio de docencia y difusión. Gracias a todos. Gracias a las chicas de traducción.